Wonderful, thank you. So thank you so much for joining us for our Female Voices series. My name is Sim. I'm the head of content at Unlimit. Could you please start us off with a bit about your incredible journey thus far? I know you've had so many ventures, so could you give us a top layer of your journey?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Agata Nowicka. Currently, I'm a founder of Female Foundry, the platform to bring, basically with a mission to bring more female entrepreneurs and investors into the startup ecosystem. And I also am an angel investor, and and I sit on a couple of boards. I'm a mentor at Techstar, so the list is long. So I'm going to stop here and answer your question. So I started my entrepreneurial journey about now 8 years ago. I used to be an architect before, so I lived in the US, London, and then I moved to Hong Kong. And that's where I set up my first startup. It was a e-commerce platform, or I would say also a data analytics company. I managed to sell that business after 1.5 years, which was, in my opinion, incredible looking back, thinking how little experience I had. And after that venture, I moved back to London, where I joined a very exciting fintech startup. And that's where my kind of the adventure with fintech started. That company, unfortunately, didn't get the FCA approval. So I actually left the company after a couple of years, did my MBA in France at INSEAD. In between, and started my second venture, which basically I met my co-founder in the previous startup, and we started a basically capital markets, a fintech startup in London, focusing on optimizing capital for investment banks. So that was my second venture. It's still going. It's actually going well. And on the top of that, because I like to keep myself busy, I've decided to start Female Foundry, which is, as I mentioned already, a platform to bring more diversity into the startup ecosystem, because I also started angel investing and I moved to that investment side, and I thought that I had a responsibility to do something about the lack of diversity in the ecosystem. So for the past 2 years, I've been mainly basically sitting on the investment side and mentorship side for startups. So I was part of the two venture capital firms, and that's where I am now.
Because the Female Foundry is a macrocosm of what I'm trying to achieve in doing this series with the support of Unlimit, it's such a powerful and passionate subject for myself as well. I know that you've mentioned it is for you, that you feel like there's a level of responsibility. What else was it that drove you to begin this journey on focusing on female investors and entrepreneurs? Was there an experience or a different kind of life lesson that had inspired you to push?
Yeah. So I would say 2 things probably pushed me into action. One was actually my personal experiences. And it's interesting because it wasn't really when I set up my first venture in Hong Kong by myself as a solo founder. It wasn't really when I was, again, doing an MBA and actually being part of the a thriving fintech startup. But it was probably in my second venture, fintech venture, that I was going into, and I was aware that I would be meeting many women, because there are not many women in investment banking or working capital market space inside investment banks. So I understood that. It's more when we started speaking with venture capital investors, that's when I started to sense bias that was really surprising to me. And at the beginning, I didn't really trust my gut instincts that there was something wrong. I thought that, maybe this is something that I'm only experiencing. Maybe this is the fact that I'm getting very specific, very different questions, the fact that I'm seeing this very different attitude of especially male venture capitalists towards me when we are doing the pitches and so on. So I started asking questions, and my co-founder also noticed that. So when we raised our round, I started digging deeper, and the statistic that really jumped at me was that actually 2% of venture funding currently, and I think that the statistic actually dropped last year, goes to female entrepreneurs. So for me personally, that was astonishing statistic. So, and at the same time, I would say one other probably factor that motivated me has been that throughout my life, I've been surrounded by incredible women, and both, executives, but also actually entrepreneurs. So for me personally, having gone through my personal experience, but also having those people around me that are truly incredible, it just didn't make sense. But you can't find, you cannot, the statistics, I accepted the fact that there was only 2% of women. So I thought, okay, you know what, we need to do something about it. And I will do as much as I can to change this, because in my opinion, it doesn't work for anyone. It doesn't work obviously for founders, but it actually doesn't work for investors either, because they miss, when you think about the population, if you just slice it into half, 50, if we assume that 50% of population are women, you are missing on serving and kind of addressing 50% of the global market. So yeah, I thought that this is an important issue. Probably about 3 years ago now, the topic really picked up. But when I was doing my survey with 65 female entrepreneurs, trying to understand their challenges, the topic was very new. Yeah. So we've already gone far, but we are not far yet. We are not there, definitely.
No, I do agree. I think there's been an amazing level of progression so far that I've seen myself, especially with speaking to like wonderful professionals like yourself. But there is still so much that can be done. And I'm sure that that's the case for many other categories and identifications. But of course, for this series specifically, we are talking about female experience. And it's a shame that you even had to have a personal experience where you felt like you were being treated differently or spoken to differently or asked different questions. And it's wonderful now that you've taken that time with your co-founder to uplift women, give them opportunities and educate them on how to make themselves visible in the industry, because it can be quite a tough industry as a whole, let alone
I think it is a tough industry, to be honest. And one thing that definitely helps helps women, and it even personally helped me, was to realize that I'm not alone. And I think that, partially solving the problem and really, obviously solving the problem of capital, that's one category, but also bringing that support to other women is as important as part of this journey.
Absolutely. And we'll come on slightly onto your mentorship as well a little bit later on. But where you've sort of touched on the lack of presence, particularly within venture capitals and investment, what other gaps have you noticed in your years of experience within the financial market, particularly in relation to the inclusion of women? And how do you foresee that changing in the next 5 to 10 years? What do you sort of think we will begin to see?
Yeah. So in the financial market specifically, I would say I would categorize the financial market, let's say, in two categories. One is actually institutional, which is, again, corporate investment banking. And some of the gaps and kind of challenges that I've seen there has been obviously specifically investment banking. Investment banks have got very unique culture that is male dominated, and it's results driven, and that itself creates quite a few challenges to really accommodate needs and kind of align with women's mindset. Very often, it's very male testosterone driven. So I would say that's one. But I'm talking about investment banks, because at the same time, in law firms, for example, you have many women working there. Very often the split is 50-50. So many of these needs have been addressed. And then you have that kind of fintech innovative side of the market that is definitely growing, and it's been growing for the past, let's say, 8 years, which is more startup culture, and that's much more flexible. And that's, if anything, has, in my opinion, been driving that change in the financial markets, especially maybe today when we are facing with the tech layoffs, and really we are talking about the market downturn. Maybe the situation is not going to tremendously help the issue, but startups need to compete for talent, and one way to compete for talent is to provide very comfortable and rewarding company culture and perks. So that, I would say, part of the market has been, in my opinion, just from my observation, been driving the change, which is very positive. And I think that will continue to happen. So just to answer your question, in 5-10 years time, I don't see any, to be honest, revolutions happening. I think we are just going to see more of positive things happening. And hopefully, one thing I must say with in investment banks, why keep it as a separate category, is because on one level, that to a certain degree, that kind of culture, results obviously driven culture, maps up to the business model of investment banks. So it will be very difficult to change that ecosystem without, maybe to a certain degree, I believe, compromising to their results. I don't want to say more than that, because it's quite it's a slippery slope I'm stepping onto. But that fintech, what I'm positive about is that fintech startup ecosystem that is driving the change and is able to address women's needs more, giving them good, generous maternity leave, health, egg freezing packages and so on. So that in itself, really, it's positive.
Thank you for sharing. I do agree, especially about how tech startups, I feel like there's a lot of room within startups, especially for the repositioning of women. So I think it's a wonderful thing to touch on. And well, let's hope in 5 to 10 years that there is fundamental change to the inclusion of women within the space. But where you've touched on numerous elements within the financial world, I know that you're juggling so many plates each day with all of the different things that you are working on. And also you're mentoring with Techstars. So how do you stay afloat of all of your work, connections, as well as the changes within the industry? Because we all know the financial world is revolutionizing at an exponential rate. So how do you stay abreast of everything?
Yes, many people actually ask me this question, and I don't have a succinct answer to it, really, because one thing that I must say, I am doing what I really love, meaning, not only building ventures, but also actually helping other ventures to be built and succeed. So that is the driving force behind anything that I do. So in one level, even though it seems that I'm doing many different things, they are really in the same industry. So the knowledge that I get from speaking about with founders, for example, and mentoring them, this gives me, a very unique insight into where startup industry is, where the trends are, and so on. I also run the VC and startup newsletter that comes out every Saturday, and it's right now read by something over 6,000 entrepreneurs and VC investors. That also keeps me on my toes to really know what's happening in the ecosystem. But really what it is, I really feel like I'm doing the same thing. I'm just helping the companies to be built, and I definitely keep one thing that I do as well is to keep myself open to learning. And it's a one thing that I must say, as a startup founder and as an investor, VC investor specifically, I don't see it as a 9-to-5 job, and I didn't see it as a founder, and I don't see it as a VC investor. Basically, you need to grow your network. You really need to stay on the top of what's happening in the investment space to spot these best opportunities early on, and that requires pretty much a 24-hour a day involvement. But that's it. What might sound like a big job or tiring, it's actually not tiring. It's pleasurable, and this is why when we started this conversation, I said I haven't been on holiday for the past 8 years. It's for many people say that to me, but it's because I haven't unplugged. But for me, unplugging would be really unnecessary. Would make my holidays boring. So I know that this is not for everyone, and this is why we don't, not everybody can be a startup founder and is meant to be a startup founder or VC investor. But yeah, that's me.
No, thank you for sharing. I think it's so lovely that you are so passionate about what you do and you truly do love it, because to say that you feel like unwinding and detaching for a while to have a break feels unnecessary, that speaks volumes. And I think it's really important that we love what we do. So know that that's beautiful. It may not be for everyone, as you mentioned, but it's phenomenal to see that it's working for you and you're impacting so many people. So I can imagine so many people are grateful for the way that you've supported them and nurtured them. Taking it slightly more to a personal level through your own experience, I know you've already mentioned about how early on when you shifted into the financial world and you had certain experiences and you noticed how you were being treated. But did you ever encounter elements of imposter syndrome or individuals who were doubting your capabilities? Because I think it's such a common problem, unfortunately, and so many, not only women, of course, but so many women are experiencing this, particularly in this period of change on the stance of women within the industry. So it would be really interesting to know if you had experienced imposter syndrome or you did notice that you're being treated differently, to help others, how you overcame those moments of doubt and how you reassure yourself.
Mm-hmm. I will tell you, I still experience imposter syndrome. And I don't know whether this is unique to being a woman or being a human. I don't know. So definitely, I can relate to anyone who and I think that it's one thing that I want to say. I think that this is a natural thing to have. I don't believe in people who don't have imposter syndrome, because I see almost imposter syndrome as a signal for me that that there is something that I need to resolve. That there is an aspect of my knowledge or of my comfort within myself that I need to address. And one thing that therefore that has been helping me throughout the years to deal with imposter syndrome has been really coming back to yourself and really being in line with your values, and only really participating in ventures that obviously expand you as a person, professionally or personally. So really, I'm not saying definitely always put that step forward or step up for yourself. Don't stay in a comfortable zone. Put yourself out of your comfort zone, but at the same time, remember who you are. Remember that what you're bringing to the table, it's a whole you, with all your experiences, with the background that you have, that is very truly unique, that might benefit, wherever you are, whatever the situations you're in, that may benefit others. And that's one thing that I've learned, and that's for me the way out, really understanding that you're truly unique, and it comes with obviously shortcomings, but actually tremendously it means that you have a very unique perspective, and therefore you can bring very unique value that you will only be able to realize what that value is if you actually step out and embrace the situation, and kind of drop that syndrome. People doubting your capabilities, I think that this happens all the time, and you need to recognize that people doubting your capabilities, either very often will have intentions because they don't want you to have certain capabilities, or they really don't actually know you. So don't take this as, don't try to believe them. Try to show them what you're worth, and hopefully that will serve you right. I don't know what to say about that, to be honest, because it happens all the time, and it's nothing wrong. People doubt your capabilities because very often they don't know you, and it's your job to really show them who you are, and therefore be transparent and really not pretend who you are as a person, because you might actually miss the opportunity by being someone else.
Yeah, thank you for that nugget of gold. I think it's a really lovely way to put it. So thank you for sharing. I know that whilst we're on the sort of area of insight, tips and tricks that would help support other generations, the financial world is a massive market. It's filled with so many different things. And of course, you've found your love in venture capitals and Web3 and mentoring. But for young girls and women who are exploring the industry and they aren't sure what area they would like to go into, what advice can you give to help them find that one particular area of interest that really resonates with them and how they could learn about it now, essentially?
Yeah. So, because you've mentioned girls, I would say, start early, start taking risks early, when those risks actually are not that big. So really what I did, and I think that's really worked for me, and that it allowed me to build this conviction about my role in venture and in financial industry, was because I was trying things and taking risks early on in my life. So one piece of advice that I would give would be explore as many things as possible early on in your career, to really, and then obviously listen to yourself, really try to really understand what works for me, if it works for you, and what works aligns with your instincts and about your picture of yourself. And that's a very intimate conversation. Yeah, this is not a conversation you have even with your parents. You know who you are the most, and therefore having this conversation and exploring these areas of interest early on will get you to that point. Sometimes it can happen in the second role you have. You might realize, oh, I absolutely love it. And sometimes it might take, for some people, 10 goes, and there's nothing wrong with that, because the most important thing is that you will be doing what you love. And I believe that if you do what you love, you will, the rewards and compensation for your work will follow.
Thank you. There's actually a saying about that where they say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're trying to get at. And that's wonderful. So moving forward slightly, I know that you are investing so much time, particularly with the Female Foundry and your mentorships and just conversations and networking. So you're supporting so many people. And it would be really interesting to know what your viewpoint is on how other organizations can also benefit from the presence of more women in venture capital, startups, and Web3 in particular.
Yes, we are touching on the topic of diversity and gender diversity in particular. As I've mentioned before, it's, in my opinion, I'm a great believer of diversity, and not only gender diversity. Female Foundry is just part of the market, but you need to, you need to find your niche. I believe that the best ideas and the best businesses are built by truly diverse teams. So I'm not going to be talking about female only, because I would say, yes, having more women around the table brings a different dynamic to the conversation. And I've seen it happen over and over again, being part of the, board meetings. Once you have a woman, other ideas appear around the table. For example, so there's a kind of group dynamic issue on a kind of very day-to-day level that, in my opinion, organizations and startups and teams overall can benefit from. But also there is a diversity of thoughts and perspectives. You can have the same background, you can be, coming out of the law school, but having a diversity, women have got very different experiences, especially later in their life when they start families and so on. So having, again, diversity of experiences can bring ideas and perspectives about maybe your customers, for example, your target group of customers that you want to address that might not be really pointed by male-only teams. So, it's a huge topic. I think that there are so many benefits, but I think that really addressing them from the perspective of bringing diversity of thought and ideas that really truly then translates into, I don't know, your revenues, your innovation, your team dynamic, your company culture. I've only seen positives. If anything, having a monochromatic teams, such as, male-only teams, or coming out of the gender diversity, only British, for example, teams. I've dealt with of that. I've spoken of such teams, and I've somehow been part of these teams, for example, as a consultant or as a mentor. I've seen that. I saw them living in the echo chamber very often. Being starved of ideas, and I'm sure that gender diversity wouldn't probably solve many of their problems, but I would say definitely it might have shifted the dynamics inside the team and maybe unlock their full potential. So yes, I would say, both on corporate and startup level and the venture capital, I can see only positives. And yeah, hopefully this has been helpful, because I don't know, it's such a big topic. It's difficult to talk about the specifics.
No, for sure. I know that's the thing. I know it was a very difficult question to pose to you, because diversity and inclusion as a whole is a massive conversation that we could never cover within a week, let alone an hour together. And then, of course, I know that we're speaking specifically to women. So I do really appreciate your stance on it, because you do have that experience, and it is a very valuable point. And I think, like you said, there is no negative in bringing a level of inclusivity into any organization. It adds different viewpoint, different expertise, and it is something that we need to see more of, which is why Unlimited's doing what we're doing and you're doing what you're doing. It's a wonderful mission that everyone is on together. So thank you.
And I one thing that I want to say, I actually saw it happen. I saw people, teams that were, let's say, only male, pretty much male dominated. The person in marketing was female, and the rest of the team was male. And I had just not even on that topic, just a conversation, and it turned out that many men actually, I'm not saying afraid, but are not familiar with teams, or kind of, especially at the kind of management or executive level, because they were not led by women, or they've never had women dominated teams, so they're kind of unfamiliar with the topic. And I haven't yet seen a team that was introduced to, a woman team member that was disappointed. If anything, I had feedback that they really cracked the team finally, and that person really brought a very different dynamic that put that team to a different level. Yes, because one thing that I also want to say, just the last point, is that Female Foundry, even though the title states female in it, my passion and my mission for that platform has been to be completely inclusive. So, for example, 30% of our community are actually men, and I've been working really systematically to bring more men into the Female Foundry ecosystem, because only by being an inclusive platform we can address that issue of unfamiliarity and make men see the benefits of having truly diverse teams, at least gender diverse teams. So I'm not saying that I'm in opposition to these initiatives, but I'm not the biggest fan of gender specific initiatives that are exclusive only to the specific gender, because that's not diversity. We are not creating diversity by creating another very closed off chamber. We are only going to improve diversity by bringing the two parts together.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think it's not about making a secular environment that just pads and supports one community of people, whether it's women or a particular sexuality or race, but it is about uplifting those people who have been marginalized and not been given those opportunities. So yes, whilst it's also about educating other counterparts, we also need to bring that opportunity where we are supporting those people who haven't been given the opportunities. So I really appreciate it. But moving on to our last question, to round us off today, it's a little bit different, but I just wanted to ask, what sort of advancements are you most excited to see coming up in the Web3 and venture capital space? And how do you think they're going to make an impact on society's way of life currently?
Yeah, it's a big question. So I'm just going to talk about the next couple of years, really, because we don't know where the world is going to go. I'm just referring to the pandemic that also stalled the world to a certain degree. So I'm very excited about generative AI and the potential, and also kind of potential and applications of the technology. I really think that it's got potential to bring the whole new areas of med tech, creative industry forward. So I'm really following that, especially the application of generative AI, because I think that even though we are on the cusp of what's possible with that technology, I'm really excited about its applications. Another thing that I'm also interested in, again, this is maybe a bigger topic, is quantum computing and its application, how it's going to basically accelerate a number of other technologies, and therefore investments and investment opportunities in the venture capital space. For the Web3, we've had a little bit of a slowdown, just based on the FTX, let's say, situation. But I think that it is good for the industry. I think that we are going to see more coherent and purposeful ventures coming out of Web3. I've been definitely excited about blockchain technology for some time now, for about 3-4 years. So, and also the latest startup has been utilizing blockchain for, I would say it's built on blockchain. So, but that's in capital markets. So looking at the infrastructure layer, also how NFT is going to reinvent itself and really serve very, very specific needs of companies and people. That will be interesting to see, and I hope to see it. And obviously there's the third area that I want to talk about is climate tech, that finally it's been picking up, and it's probably been representing, I can't remember now, but I think that it was the fastest growing category for venture capital last year, and I think that that's going to continue. We are going to see many more startups, finding creative ways to address the climate change, and also, let's say, reducing humanity's footprint. So these are the three areas that I think that will be that I want to focus on in the next 2 to 3 years, and I think that in these 2 to 3 years, we are going to see real life applications of these technologies. I think that will be exciting.
Absolutely. I think those are phenomenal choices, especially climate tech. I also am so interested to see how that will revolutionize the way that we know the world today. So thank you so much for sharing. But Agata,
on the climate tech, I'm looking forward to actually seeing, how climate tech can be embedded into our daily lives, because right now we see climate tech on the corporate level, but I would like to see more of how we are going to encourage change in people's behavior as well. So kind of coming from the top and going from the bottom up. I think that's the only way we are going to make progress. So yeah, sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Thank you. So yes, that essentially summarizes our time together, Agata, and I'm so grateful for you making the time to speak with me today and join our series with Unlimit. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and I'm truly inspired by the work that you do. I think it's such an incredible journey that you've been on, and I'm sure it inspires many others. So I do really, really genuinely appreciate you making the time to speak with me today.
Thank you so much, Sim. And I really admire what you do at Unlimited. Thank you for this series. I hope that they're going to help some women and also men to change the perspective on the diversity. And yeah, and I only believe that positive things will come out of this series. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much.